We're going to dip into a couple of things right now, kind of speed round in a little change of pace, because again, reserving the right to dip out of something because of the lack of clarity later on. There's a story we talked about last week where China brokered a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia where they would resume, ties, where they would reopen their embassies and have ambassadors in them. Now, they stopped this in 2016 when Trump became president. They had them all during the Obama years. Weird. And then Trump became president and they didn't. And then midway through the Biden administration, they're back to having them again. Say about it what you will. That said, Iraq actually brokered this deal, just for the record. China came in at the last second and took credit for it and kind of put the spit polish on it, put a cherry on top, but effectively got nothing for it. Like, it is literally just the opening of those buildings and then embassies, which is, or embassies and ambassadors, which is fine. But it's not going to stop the Iranians from funding the Houthis in Yemen. There's no agreement that they would do this. It wouldn't stop the Saudis from fomenting the violence that's in the western part of Iran. Like, none of that was in there. And certainly no human rights shit. That's the one good thing about China brokering a deal for you, is that you're not bogged down with all that humanity. The Americans in the West, we always ask for that kind of shit. Like, you two behave, but also treat your people nice. Yeah, it's just it's gross of us, really. It's culturally insensitive. Don't we understand that being misogynist and gross is an intrinsic part of those societies, and they certainly couldn't survive without them, no matter what anyone says. But here you go. This is China brokers historic Iran-Saudi deal. Is she on top of the world? Is she on top of the world? Yeah, he is, Dinesh. Tell us all about it.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, hold on. Here you go. I have to hit play on this guy.
Some very big news coming out of China and
huge,
and also out of the Middle East, which is being treated as small news or relatively uneventful news.
But it's giant. It's huge. This is life-changing. This is a fundamental shift. This is like, you remember the Abraham Accords? Bullshit. Trump ain't got nothing on she.
Here in the United States.
And arguably, even like I said, Iraq negotiated most of this deal. But in those terms, what Xi Jinping did between, establishing embassies and ambassadors going back and forth between Iran and Saudi Arabia, way bigger than, Qatar and the UAE getting along nice with, economically with Israel.
United States. Here's a headline from the Washington Post.
Yeah, headlines are enough. I don't need the actual details. And please don't read paragraph
Post. 3. China brokers Iran-Saudi Arabia détente, raising eyebrows in Washington.
Yes, isn't that adorable? How China is kicking America's ass in the negotiating amongst awful dictators who, torture women and throw reporters into wood chippers.
Raising eyebrows in Washington. Now, this is the kind of foreign policy equivalent of saying your neighbor is having an affair with your wife, quote, raising eyebrows in the household. I can almost imagine.
Well, no, that would be your neighbor negotiating the basically setting up your ex, your one of your friends with benefits, that would be the Saudis, with a former, well, not even a rival, I wouldn't put it that, like, and just an asshole from the neighborhood who keeps driving over your lawn and trying to hit kids because we're playing stickball in the street, that kind of stuff, and they're trying to hook them up, right? And you're looking out your window going, good luck.
Imagine the elevated eyebrow, like, well, really?
I don't know. We have to ask, why is Debbie on the show today, Dinesh? Where is she? She's raising eyebrows on this show, I'll tell you that right now.
It's crazy.
It is. It's crazy. It's cuckoo. It's crazy go nuts. It's so outrageous, fantastical, and also insane.
It's crazy because
It's crazy because it's cuckoo.
something
It's
really big has happened, and
mm,
it's being portrayed as if it's nothing more than, first of all, they don't even treat the event as news. They're looking at the reaction in Washington as if a bunch of Washington pundits are quizzically looking over at China and the Middle East saying, this is a little bit interesting. Maybe we ought to take a look at this one. Maybe we'll commission a paper about it.
oh, somebody's been taking classes from Glenn Beck on how to do shitty voices.
Well, what's the it? The it
Yeah, what is the it? Tell us what the
here
deal
is
is.
this. And you
Okay.
have to put this against the backdrop of how the world has been, certainly in the 40 or so years since I've been in this country, but going all the way back to World War II. By and
Mm,
large, it's been taken for granted that nothing important can happen in the world. A dispute between India and Pakistan, for example, a kind of flare up between North and South Korea, some agitation in the Middle East.
a flare up. That's what the Korean War was. A flare up.
And
Gotcha.
America immediately swoops in. America is the agreed upon sort of referee, umpire. The American position often ends up being the position that is ultimately taken. And this is what it means to be the world's sole superpower. Now,
Hmm.
suddenly,
By the way, does this idiot think that other countries don't and have not bartered peace deals and ceasefires over the last 70 years? That the UK just kind of France and in Africa just that they just sit back and wait for the US to cover them? No? Okay.
these rules are changing and are not just changing in the future, but are
Doesn't all change happen in the future? Otherwise it would be the current status quo. Sorry, that's very eyebrow raising in its stupidity.
changing now. And this latest example is a
Mhm.
dramatic illustration of that. So, Iran and Saudi Arabia are enemies. It's important to
Okay.
emphasize that Iran and Saudi Arabia are, some people think, well, they're both Muslims, and so obviously they're not enemies. Well,
Well, yeah, I mean, they're not insofar as they want to destroy America. That's the one area where they agree, right, Dinesh? And so the idea of them getting together or that China's putting them together doesn't mean that China's trying to foment violence against the United States or create alliances that will attack the United States where you currently live, but that they're just finally coming around to how sweet the other is and aligning themselves under a giant jihadi banner.
actually, no. First of all, the Saudis are Arabs, the Iranians are not. Number two,
Okay, got that right.
there is huge rivalry for who gets to
Mm.
be top dog in the Middle East.
Right. So obviously, this is going to work out very
The
well.
rivalry
Hi. Okay. Hold on one second. Yeah. Like it. Women weaken legs. Summer's going to the gym and she's wearing her Mickey's gym Rocky shirt. You don't need to know that.
is between the important countries in the region, really namely three: Iran, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has by and large been in the American orbit. It's been our
Hmm.
ally, and Iran.
And by the way, during Obama, it had embassies open and ambassadors in Iran. Okay.
Has been our adversary, at least since the Khomeini revolution of the late 1970s. So,
Hmm.
what does it mean that these two adversaries that had no diplomatic relations with each other, they weren't talking?
No, they never. They did never. We might have to give me a second. Let me look this up. Hold on. Let's see. If I obviously Arabia, Saudi Arabia, Iran. If I type in reestablish, obviously nothing's going to come up. Uh, hmm. They never. They never. Is that the? That's the phrase we're going to use. That's the hosted by China. That Iran brokered again. Saudi Arabia and Iran agreed to restore ties. How can you restore something you never had, Dinesh? The deal between regional rivals underlies China's growing economic and political importance in the Middle East and what some analysts say is waning American influence. Yes, analysts like Dinesh D'Souza. Yawn. By the way, we want waning influence in that part of the world because we don't want to need that influence in that part of the world. Again, you're not buying a Saudi Arabia, a washing machine or a Saudi Arabian phone. It's oil and gas. And if we can get our own and we can do it in a way that's less environmentally damaging until we transition to something else, that's how we should do it. We don't want to, we're out of the blood for oil business. And if we were ever truly in it, that's another conversation for another time. But we're the entire U.S. population has lost its appetite for dealing with that fuckery. And China can jump in there because that and try their hand at it because they are seeking the exact same thing. Riyadh, after years of open hostility and proxy conflicts between the Middle East, Saudi Arabia and Iran have agreed to reestablish diplomatic ties, they announced on Friday, in a significant pivot for the two regional rivals that was facilitated by China. China hosted the talks that led to the breakthrough, highlighting Beijing's growing role, blah, 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 particularly Middle East. 7 years after cutting formal ties. What happened 7 years ago? Oh, 2016? Is that? Okay. Iran and Saudi Arabia will reopen embassies in each other's countries within 2 months, confirming their respect for the sovereignty of states and non-interference in their internal affairs. It sounds like the Russian-NATO foundation agreement, which I'm sure both of them will, in their alliance with Russia and their being friendly with Putin, totally honor. They said in a joint statement published by the official Saudi press agency, Iran state news media also announced the deal. The two countries agreed to reactivate a lapsed security cooperation pact, a shift that comes after years of Iranian-backed militias in Yemen targeting Saudi Arabia with missile and drone attacks, as well as older trade, investment, and cultural accords. Whether the shift leads to a deep or lasting détente between the governments that has been long in conflict remains unclear, but there have been signs that both nations wanted to find a way to step back from confrontation. Saudi and Iranian officials had engaged in several rounds of talks over the past 2 years, including Iraq and Oman, but without significant steps forward. Protesters outside the Saudi embassy in Tehran in 2016. Saudi Arabia cut its ties with Iran the year after protesters stormed the embassy over Saudi Arabia's execution of a prominent Shiite cleric. For the United States, the agreement signals that it cannot take for granted the preeminent influence it once wielded in Saudi Arabia, an ally that is charting a more independent diplomatic course, and elsewhere as China, a rising superpower, builds trade and diplomatic relations around the world. And again, good luck in your senior year.
Talking to each other are now coming together, and they're coming together in important ways.
Yes, very important ways. What are those important ways, Dinesh?
They're going to open up diplomatic relations. So that means embassies, an Iranian embassy in Saudi Arabia, a Saudi embassy in Iran.
Which, are they going to open them or are they going to reopen them? It's kind of important.
They're also going to begin a trade partnership and a technology partnership while respecting, quote, the principle of non-interference in the internal affairs of states. So the Saudi...
Right. That's why China could negotiate it, because neither one of them is going to tell them that they can't hang their women or torture them or poison them if they get uppity.
These are not going to try to foment dissent in Iran.
I say foment dissent, right. Let the women think they've got a shot.
And the Iranians are agreeing not to.
Oh, happy birthday, Kenneth Otto. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Kenneth Otto. And JD Christie, thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. And Jolie, thanks for saying that as well. And Alan, thank you. By the way, like, subscribe, thumbs up. Also, happy birthday to Teresa K. Tack, the mostest fantastic greed arena. Yes, that's totally true.
To do the same in Saudi Arabia. Now, this deal was brokered by China, apparently with some help of Oman and one or two other of the Arab kingdoms. But the meetings that led to this were held
one or two of the Iraqs
in Beijing. And there was a so-called, I'm now looking at it here, joint trilateral statement by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the People's Republic of China.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this signals an exit of Saudi Arabia from the Western orbit. Not to say that
Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you.
that Saudis won't sell oil, for example, to OPEC, or sell oil through a cartel system to the United States, but it means that we cannot count on the Saudis anymore. And really, why? It's because
and they can't count on us.
We have pushed the Saudis away. Mohammed.
Aw, why? We pushed the Saudis away? It's terrible. And after they've been so nice to our reporters.
Bin Sultan
and women.
The head of Saudi Arabia was actually very close to Trump.
And we pushed them away. He was very close. Still is, actually.
Very close to the United States. He's known to be
very close to Xi. They're all one big happy family. It's like the old ones.
A pro-U.S. guy, and the Biden people have driven him into the arms of China. This is the undeniable reality. We're seeing almost no comment to this effect. We're not even seeing any introspection about it. How did something like this happen? And as I say, it's a really big deal. In fact,
yes, it's huge. It's going to change the world as we know it, Dinesh. It's going to work out great, and there's no bumpy roads ahead. The thing, if we know anything about the Middle East, it's that once something is set, it stays that way, and the quicker and you can make a deal, the longer it stays in place, and that's the important thing that's going to come from all this.